Welcome to the Longevity Optimization Podcast, where we discuss longevity, optimal health, nutrition, peak performance, cognitive excellence, and so much more.
Dr. Furman, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to discuss with you.
Absolutely. So we're at the Longevity Investors Conference, and you just did an incredible presentation.
Thank you.
Of course. What are you, you're known for Inflammaging, right? Inflammation, which we know is the root cause of most chronic disease, I think at least. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But what are you working on that you're most excited about related to inflammation or really anything that's exciting you the most about longevity?
Right. So I've been working on understanding the social and lifestyle determinants of inflammation. And we call this type of inflammation inflammaging, right? Because it rises with age in most individuals, almost linearly. Okay. And one is to identify the causes, the triggers. And a different bucket is to really understand what are the biomarkers, what are the measurements that we can have to identify this type of silent inflammation that happens through the body. But you're absolutely right, it's the major determinant of almost every hallmark of aging. We published this in last year. We got the cover of Molecular Metabolism in a good journal, and also cause a lot of burden in the economy when it comes to chronic diseases.
Absolutely. I know it's tragic, the levels of chronic disease specifically. In the US, I'm more familiar with those stats. But so you mentioned you're identifying the biomarkers for inflammation or inflammaging. What are those looking like? You and I were chatting earlier, and some of the ones that we might be looking at on a blood work panel might not be the most accurate.
Yeah. So let me just go back to early 2000, where this idea that inflammation participates in age-related diseases was for the first time identified. We know that inflammation is very important for an immune response to infections. And there we have very good biomarkers that you can identify in blood or in different tissues that are inflamed in response to an infection or trauma. Yeah. And those are called cytokines that they're circulating blood. Some of them are called interleukins or TNF, tumor necrosis factors, stuff like that. CRP is another example of an acute phase reactant to an infection. Now, when we're talking about inflammaging, those markers are not very accurate at predicting diseases of aging or aging itself. So we took an unbiased approach, and we started a long and very expensive project at Stanford. It's called the 1,000 Immunomes Project. And in that project, we recruited 1,000 healthy individuals, and we follow them over the years with around 70 million in funding from NIH.
Wonderful.
And we collected a lot of different data types, and one of those data types were proteins from blood. And so we tried to extract the relevant contributors to age-related diseases, morbidity, frailty, cardiovascular aging, for example. And those were different proteins. They're not the interleukin, they're not the CRP, these are different proteins. And so we built with a machine learning and AI model a new clock for inflammaging.
Wonderful. In terms of, we know that are there 9 or 12 hallmarks of aging now?
Yeah, there's 12.
Okay, 12. So it keeps increasing.
It keeps growing.
Yeah, okay.
As we study more biology of aging, we discover new mechanisms and new hallmarks.
Which is great, because ideally, long term, we'll have more targeted solutions for each one of those hallmarks, ideally. What would you say inflammation, how big of that role in comparison to the other 12 that we have?
It's hard to say. We've done a few analyses to evaluate the contribution of each of the hallmarks to age-related disease by using large language models, and inflammation comes down first. Second, cellular senescence. Third, genomic instability, and then the list goes on. But the most important part is not which of these hallmarks of aging is the most important contributor, but rather how they are interconnected.
Yeah.
If you target one, chances are you're targeting other ones. And so that's really interesting. And we've done some of that research to try and identify networks of hallmarks of aging. And inflammation is in the middle. So this is a hub for the different hallmarks of aging. And that's the paper that I mentioned that was published in 2023 in Molecular Metabolism and got the cover of the journal.
I love that. I mean, you've done such amazing work. And the test, it will be available somewhat soon, right?
Yes.
Will consumers be able to purchase the test on their own, or how will we go about that?
At first, we're rolling this out through clinics and healthcare providers. The test requires an interpretation and some holding hands with the medical doctor or healthcare provider that will administer the test. It's a very straightforward blood extraction with a device that you stick in your arm. You get some blood out of that and send it to our labs. We report back.
Wonderful.
And then moving on, we're planning to roll this out as a direct-to-consumer product.
Love it. Well, obviously you can count my clinic in as being one of the first clinics. So people in California and Ohio can order it there. Well, that's so exciting. If you need a test subject in the meantime, please let me know, because I always want to keep a pulse on my immune system.
Yeah.
When it comes to factors that really impact aging, they're causing inflammation. I love what we talked about this morning. We were talking about our environment and maybe ancestral components and the kind of environments we're in now. What do you think is causing so much inflammation in our current population?
Yeah, that is a conversation that could last forever. It's a long list of things. I always like to give the example that any species that is moved to a new environment will develop inflammation. It's a natural response to something new. And so we definitely did not evolve in this environment with electrical light, with being sitting in chairs and being exposed to pollution and plastics and dairy products and wheat and things that we were able to develop over time after the agricultural revolution. And so we are definitely not in our evolutionary niche, right? So we develop inflammation. This is what we call the exposome, the collection of physical, chemical entities in the environment that we're exposed to throughout life. And that's what triggers inflammation, circadian rhythm disruption. It's a long list. Electromagnetic fields. We discussed that this morning. It's a biggie, although not a lot of people talk about it. Plastics that are endocrine disruptors and they cause inflammation. Pesticides in foods. Hyperglycemic foods, ultra-processed.
I know.
We call it foods, but
this is not food.
It's probably not food.
Yeah,
we shouldn't call it food.
Food-like substance.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, which is very important, the microbiome. Microbiome, most of us deficient in diversity of microbiome. When we compare ourselves to hunter and gatherers and other, more pre-agriculture civilizations, the difference between them and us is about 300-fold in the diversity of the microbiome. Why is it that the case? Because we are consuming things that wipe out our microbiome, like drugs, ibuprofen, Tylenol, and also different substances in foods, right? Like polysorbate 80, carboxymethyl cellulose. Those are added to ice cream and cosmetics and every single food out there that cause emulsifiers, right? Surfactants, emulsifiers. They wipe out your microbiome. So we don't get as exposed. We don't feed our microbiome. Again, the list goes on, and we can talk about this forever.
No, I love this. I mean, it's so important. And there's so many different points too, talking about, I feel like, I was, and other people of course are too, but I've been posting about EMFs and I mean, these AirPods that people are wearing all the time. To me, I mean, I obviously don't have a PhD, but to me it feels like common sense to not put like something that's Bluetooth communicating through your brain. But I made a post about that on social media, and it like went crazy. Like people are like, no, it's not harmful. It's non-ionizing radiation. And to the best of my understanding, okay, maybe if you did non-ionizing radiation once, but when you have these in your ears all day long, it's this accumulation. Like radiation can cause an acute damage to the cell, right? Basically like ripping them apart. But I mean, this accumulation of all of these things from microplastics to, I mean, poor children. I feel like children these days wear the AirPod headphones just all day long, sometimes sleeping. And it feels like it should just be common sense. And also it's weird to me that these products are even allowed, but that's like a whole other situation.
So the short answer is, I don't think we're well posed to claim strongly that these different devices are causing harm. There's not enough evidence, unfortunately. We know that at the molecular and cellular level, that's true. That's what's happening. But we don't see, for example, long-term studies associating any of these things with diseases. And so the regulatory framework in which these are approved is a very low bar. And we're not talking about long-term effects. So unfortunately, although we see studies in mice that have increased cancer rates when you put just a cell phone next to them for hours and hours, and so the data is there. Unfortunately, not so much in humans.
Well, I mean, that's why I think it's so important. And I always tell people, like, you have to take control of your own health because, I mean, the idea would be, right, you go to the store and anything that you pick up off the shelf would be non-harmful to your health. But unfortunately, I mean, from the food to our clothes and microplastics.
That's not the case.
It's not the case. So if you want to be healthy these days, I mean, you just have to do things so differently. Can you talk a little bit about your experiment when you were living an ancestral lifestyle?
Yes. So I studied many determinants of inflammation for years, and I was suffering from migraines. I was doing my postdoc at Stanford. It was very challenging. Postdoc salary is very low, and had 2 kids, and it was very challenging and complicated. And so I decided to do an experiment and completely change my lifestyle. And I moved to the countryside, this little valley called San Gregorio. It's very close to Stanford campus, but it's just gorgeous, beautiful. And off the grid, right? In a cabin. And I changed everything from the use of containers in my life, where all the plastics were to the garbage. And I started to buy glass containers and stainless steel containers. And I changed completely my diet. So no more, wheat-derived products, so no more bread, no more pasta. All the carbs went down to the very, very bottom. Organic, everything organic. I wouldn't touch anything that's not organic. Lots of salmon. I would go to the pier and buy off the boat my 15-pounder wild Alaskan salmon. And so I slice it and freeze it down and have mainly as a diet, as a base diet, wild salmon and berries, organic berries. Changed dramatically, and it was absolutely amazing. we got rid of chairs. We didn't have any chairs.
Oh, wow.
After 7:30 p.m., no more electrical light, so just candles.
Yeah.
The only source of heat was my wood-burning stove.
Oh, wow.
It was really a big change, as what you see in the city.
Your sleep was probably amazing, though, because sleeping in such cold temperatures, I found unbelievable.
Yes, so sleeping was great. No more headaches ever again.
Wow, I love that.
That was a huge change in my quality of life, in my mood. I was very enthusiastic and very energetic, much more than ever. And we've known that some ketogenic diets, for example, have this effect of have increased energy and stuff like that. So a lot of different changes with great results, moving around much more than before. And the list is long.
Hi guys, I'm going to interrupt this episode for a brief announcement. As you may or may not know, I started a community for females by females, and it's a female longevity optimization community. This is a place that you can connect with like-minded women. We are all here to support each other, and there's a variety of different benefits to being a member. You get a monthly Ask Me Anything, so submit your questions and I'll answer them directly. We also have an entire library of courses on all of the important components of longevity, such as labs, nutrition, exercise, sleep optimization, longevity optimization protocols that I'm doing, along with real-time updates to my personal protocols. There are so many benefits of being a member of the community. We'll also be doing in-person live events here in California and virtual events for anyone that can't attend. But if you're interested in joining the community, I would absolutely love to see you there, and I will include a link in the show notes.
You were doing a workout routine that was only like 5 minutes in the morning, right? But
yes.
you were in the best shape of your life?
Yes. So I was around 40 years old, right? And rejuvenating. That's what I would feel.
I love that.
Largely rejuvenating. I can show you photos. I was buffed and my six-pack, which is great. And it didn't take too much effort. Yeah. My routines, my daily routines, morning routines were 5 minutes count. And very specific things like handstands and push-ups and pull-ups. And that's it. Although I changed this idea of, when we study biology, we know that all the species tend to do the minimum effort. That's a minimum effort law, right? I was going complete the opposite. I would when I go to grocery shopping, for example, I would park my car further away to carry my bags and avoid to go to the gym. I don't need to go to the gym, right? And so constant challenges as far as my exercise goes, were, I think, largely beneficial. So I believe in the, maximal effort law, not the minimum.
Yeah. I love that. It's funny because on the way here, which we were on the same flight, we were on the train, and basically we hit like every form of transportation except boat on the way here.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was amazing to me because I always take the stairs going down. I have my bags, we take the stairs, but every single person is on the escalator. Yeah. I'm like, is this just is this like a herd behavior? Like one does it, so everybody does it?
I think it's lack of information. Those very small changes add up.
They do, yeah.
And so I think your podcast and with people like you, spread the word out there of these minimal changes that you can have in your life that add up largely, that you can prevent diseases. It's the effective mass is massive, right? You can reduce inflammation, you can push a health span and have a long life, and that's a healthy life.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's really because even this concept of like sitting all day long and then working out for 30 minutes to 1 hour, which most people are not doing anyway. Going from the couch to the refrigerator is most certainly not a workout. So you have to. I love though the idea of moving just throughout the day, and I completely understand that not a lot of people have the ability to do that, right? I mean, I'm working from home now, but anytime that you can, any meeting that I have, like a phone call, I go outside. I live in the hills. It's like good zone 2 cardio, but just like trying to be moving as much as possible instead of just, I don't know if you, I know this might not be your niche, but I've seen some studies about sitting all day and then the 1 hour workout. It's obviously like far better, right? To be moving throughout the day and intermixing workouts. Is that more beneficial for health?
There was a science paper published around 10 years ago showing almost a perfect correlation between the time you're sitting in a chair and mortality.
Yeah.
As simple as that. And the reason is we haven't evolved being sitting in chairs. It causes inflammation. We know that. So I think you're absolutely right. I think the fact that both of us are advocates of moving around much more than the average person, and avoiding being sitting, avoiding sedentarism in a way. And it doesn't have to be a very extenuous workout. It doesn't have to be. It could be if you want to really, really be super in tune with your body, definitely, but it doesn't have to be. With these minimal changes, you can be really super healthy and avoid diseases.
Absolutely. I mean, they say, what's the saying? 80% of apps are made in the kitchen, right? I think a lot of the factors are just the ecosystem that you have inside of your body and around your body, and your gut microbiome. All of that stuff influences weight, because I mean, I don't work out now as nearly as hard as I used to, and I've still maintained a very good physique. I mean, I used to be in the gym, and I had an 8-pack at that time. I don't necessarily have that now, but you can still maintain really good health overall, just environment, lifestyle, and moving around. So I love that.
Just on that front, I implemented those learnings. Now I live in San Francisco in the outer Sunset by the beach, and it's a city, and you get more temptations and pollution and noise from cars and stuff
EMFs
like that. And exactly. And so it's not the same, but I try to implement those learnings from those old days into my daily routine today. And so it's doable.
Yeah, I think you mentioned last night at the dinner that you like surfing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an amazing grounding too, right?
Yeah.
Like you're getting all these healing frequencies.
Yes. I enjoy, but much more than enjoying is I need it.
Yeah.
It's grounding is just relieving all the stress and the not just stress as in social stress, but also we think a lot, right? We have a lot of intellectual activity throughout the day. As a scientist, we're thinking on so many different aspects of the biology of aging and how to apply these things, and biomarkers and interventions and wellness and prevention. So it can be daunting, and being in the water with the waves, nobody out there, maybe a few people. Ocean Beach is pretty laid back, and it's mostly for experienced surfers, so it's not a whole lot of people there. It's fun, it's great. I really need it.
Yeah.
It's super helpful.
I love that. Any other tips on inflammation for people before we move on to your older twin?
Well, taking a holistic approach, as we mentioned, is critical. And most of the times, I think the elephant in the room is is exactly that, is how do we promote lifestyle and decisions, and that's difficult. It's a challenge for most people, but also the lack of information on these minimal changes that you can implement every day in your life.
Yeah. So. I always say, the best exercise movement is the one that you'll do, right? So, I mean, start with 2 minutes and work up every day. I think when people make extremely audacious goals, like they're going to change everything overnight, the science says, right, that doesn't work.
Fails.
Yeah, long term. Yeah. So just these small things, pick like 1 or 2 small things, like you're going to, walk for 15 minutes more during the day, and just start there. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of data on walking and jogging, preventing mortality by 8 years, by 5 years. It's really crazy.
Well, the important question, because we've all heard different amounts of steps, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I get at least 15,000 steps a day. I'm walking all the time. But what is the minimum threshold in terms of steps?
It varies depending on the study. Some studies have shown half an hour, which corresponds to certain steps. And some people, the Stanford study showed that 10 minutes can extend health span significantly. And so, it depends on the study and the population.
What do you try to get personally?
That's an interesting question. I used to be very focused on measurements. I'm no longer that person. I have the feeling that causes a level of stress that I prefer to avoid. And so, I don't count steps.
No counting steps. All right. Well, I still count mine. But it doesn't, all these things, a lot of people ask me, like, does, this whole routine and this whole lifestyle cause you stress? It truly doesn't. I love it so much, and I get that not everyone is going to, but it's my mentality, right? I feel so blessed to be able to move my body, to walk, to be in sun, to be in nature. I mean, that is I'm so lucky to be able to do that and enjoy it. So
many people cannot do it, unfortunately. But I guess minimal changes. I used to wear a Whoop device, and my minimum strain, I wanted to be 12, 15 and up. But I prefer not to wear anything else. I don't know. It's a personal decision.
Yeah, I totally get it. Probably one day, whenever I move off the grid and have this biological home, I probably won't have any technology over there. Real quick before we move on, because I've had some interesting comments around my sleep setup, which I explained to you, organic bed with the mattress and then the EMF, but you're sleeping on a wool mattress. So what's your kind of rationale behind that?
Evolutionary medicine. The firmer, the better. Wool is a natural product. Organic linen covers the wool. We have a provider that comes from Bulgaria. It's just amazing. They do really high quality stuff. All my furniture at home comes from the same vendor. So it's all natural organic products and cotton or linen. And so I really enjoy the mattress. There is a bit of a challenge that you have to flip it every 10 days or so to avoid, So.
How heavy is it? I didn't ask you that.
They're a little bit heavy, on the heavy side, but, that's good.
Yeah, it's good. You need to be taking heavy stuff up.
Exactly. You don't need to go to the gym.
I love that.
Some people won't. Anyway.
Okay, so let's talk about this older twin. What are you doing with this AI older twin, gravity, what's going on there?
Yeah, so many people have heard of this digital twin, which is basically using a lot of your data to produce a simulation of a person on that computational space, right? What we're doing is something slightly different. We're taking cells from individuals, we're exposing them to simulated microgravity. And we're accelerating the aging of those cells by about 5 to 7 years. What that means is that we can have a window for how that person will age and which mechanisms will affect that person in the next 5 years. And so we can prevent them. We can develop, countermeasures. This whole idea started with a collaboration with NASA. 4 years ago, we started a program after NASA reached out to us and they asked about a collaboration. Susie Sanello used to be at the Human Research Program in Houston. And she reached out and said, David, your research in the immunome and aging are so applicable to the stuff we're doing in trying to develop countermeasures for this accelerated aging in astronauts, to protect our astronauts from accelerated aging. That blew my mind. Right?
That's amazing. They are accelerating their aging when they're in space, right?
Exactly. So when they're in space, there's about 15 to 30-fold increase in age acceleration for the brain, for the heart, muscles, immune system, every single organ in the body. And so that really created an opportunity for me to go and study accelerated aging, and we envision a way to do this in the lab. And that's where the simulated microgravity comes in.
Yeah.
We purchased some equipment that was engineered by NASA, and we put the cells in microgravity, in the simulated microgravity in the lab, and we can have that window for how you will age in the next 5 years. And we test different compounds. And then we can give you a very exact approximation of what you should take that may be very different from what I need, right, to prevent my aging.
Well, that is incredibly exciting. Like, what are some of the compounds that you might be testing? Like, let's say maybe you identify that genomic instability, because that seems like a difficult one. Obviously, lifestyle can be. But what might you then test to see if it would work?
Yeah, we don't have a predefined list. We do this very unbiasedly. We use machine learning and AI that we've developed over the past 4 years approximately in the lab to go from these omics technologies with gene expression and so on to compound identification. So we build what's called the interactome. These are genes and chemical entities that are interacting that we know from public domain databases. And so if there is a change in expression of certain genes, we can pull the compounds in silico using a computer that will normalize that gene expression. And so there's literally thousands of compounds that are analyzed, and the algorithm will spit out a list of the top 20. And then based on that, I can give you recommendations. We can also test some of those on your age cells to see how strong they can reverse or prevent those signatures from happening.
Well, I need to do this one too.
Yeah.
That would be so exciting.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see which exactly compounds you should are predicted to work, but also they can work on your age cells in vitro, in the lab, in a dish, right?
Yeah.
We tested a few already in a paper that was published this year, alongside with other 4 papers that came all together in the Nature package in June of this year. And one of the compounds that we selected based on this unbiased approach was quercetin. So quercetin was able to reduce 70% of the aging signatures in the blood cells that we tested in microgravity. Very powerful.
Do you take quercetin?
I don't. Again, I don't measure myself. I don't do much supplements. I do typically, I think that if you have a very complete nutritional guidance, and you can, very, very diverse fruits and vegetables, lots of salmon and herring and sardines. You get your omega-3s, you get your vitamins, you get your coenzymes, you get your minerals. You may not need to supplement. That's my take. Everybody has a different opinion in the field. Some people are measuring the levels of vitamins and minerals from blood and supplementing.
I've done that, yeah.
Yeah, so I've gone through those processes and having the Whoop and the Aura and counting steps. I'm no longer that type of profile.
Yeah.
I prefer to take it, as I have built a natural lifestyle that I can control, and I don't get out of that nutritional guidance. I'm finalizing a book that uses evolutionary medicine to combat inflammaging and diseases, and that's my guideline.
I love that. Well, when's the book coming out?
It's been finalized. We still need to negotiate with publisher and everything else, but I can send you my outline.
Yeah, I would love that. And when it becomes available, let me know. So I can let everyone know it's available to purchase. No, I agree. I mean, so what the strategy I'm kind of employing is I'll do the test of the nutrient status, like a Nutri-Eval, and then I'll supplement or do like an IV or something to get the levels where they should be. But then in my brain, I'm like, okay, I need to add more vitamin C into my diet, The hardest thing for me is, and that's why like growing your own food would be ideal, right? Because our soil is so depleted of nutrients. I'm not sure if you agree with this, but it's a little bit difficult to try to, I'm now going to the farmer's market, only. I actually have this amazing like subscription. I'll tell you, it's in LA. It's great. So it's all regenerative farms, and they're all like packed up and then shipped, but it's picked. Because the other problem is, right, when the food is picked and then it travels so far and it's losing nutrients as it goes. So it's a whole thing, the nutrients.
Yeah, it's a long conversation, but I agree with you. Monoculture and the entire food system is completely broken. I'm buying also of the farmer's market, local, organic. But yes, most of the soils around the world, especially in the U.S., are completely depleted, and so it's a growing concern. I'm trying to counteract this reality by just buying local and from sources that I know. Ideally, you want to grow your own veggies, but that's oftentimes not possible.
Yeah, I'm going to work on it.
It requires a lot of space, right?
Yes, space, time, effort, all that. Well, one quick question about the fish, just because I really value your opinion. So what do you think will happen with the future of fish? Because I love eating, these wild caught fish, but now with the levels of heavy metals in them sometimes, is that a concern at all to you?
It is. It is. So heavy metals is one concern, especially for the long-lived fish.
Like tuna.
Tuna, that's
biggest
one that is very dangerous, I would say. Small fish are always preferred. So sardines, herring, and also salmon is not too bad as far as the heavy metal content goes. But one big concern is plastics. They're everywhere, and they're probably the third largest existential threat that there is for humans. And we breathe them, whether they're in the waters, in the ocean, and we're exposed to them. There are certain tests that are now being developed. We have one at the Buck Institute that we're working on to detect micro and nanoplastics from blood, and there's some solutions as to how to countermeasure those effects. Not something that is ready for prime time.
Can you just repeat what you said? You said that microplastics are the third most existential threat to human life. Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. It's the third existential threat to humanity after the Second World War and the climate change. We're finalizing now a paper that will probably come out in Science talking about this issue, how impactful it is, negatively impactful, how even the most pristine areas on the planet are packed with plastics. The Tibet and the Arctic and the Antarctica, and this is just everywhere. It's in the air, it's in the soils, it's in the water sources, it's everywhere. But again, we're working hard on developing diagnostics and solutions for it. And ultimately, what we need is really advance the conversations with policymakers and government and stop plastic production entirely. And there is a negotiation committee in the United Nations happening. The fourth one was in Ottawa in April of this year. There's going to be another one coming pretty soon. And they're trying to sign a treaty that by 2040, we will stop plastic production entirely in the whole planet. There's a lot of pushback from oil companies especially. And you can see that from the last conference in Ottawa. There were 290 lobbyists and only like 50 delegates from different countries. So there's a lot of push from the oil industry in general.
But 24, I mean, that's a long time. Well, we need to figure out a way to get rid of the plastics now. At least to be able to like detox them from our bodies, right? I mean, we talked about a couple potential solutions, but.
Yeah, but I mean, stop plastic production completely in the world will require a massive shift in the entire industry that touches every single aspect of human life, from consumer products, services, cars, phones, everything.
Wow, that will be
it's massive.
A very different world.
Yeah,
It'll be amazing.
A very nice and beautiful world to live in.
I know. Well, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having invited me here.
Of course. We'll have to do a longer one back in LA.
Happy to.
So, all right. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
This podcast is for informational purposes only, and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Kayla Barnes, does not accept responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of the information contained herein. Opinions of their guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.